Hey everybody, and welcome back to another UI challenge video. This is going to be the second video I've done in this series. I just released the first video last week and everybody seemed to like it, so I'm going to do another one now. And the general idea is that I'm just going to take some kind of interesting UI concept, generally something that I find. The last video was from Dribble. But basically any example of some cool UI pattern, we'll just walk through building on screen, and I'm going to do that live. So I'm going to these videos with no idea how to actually achieve it, just a vague idea of what I want to build, and then we'll either build something successfully and it's going to be awesome, we'll learn something along the way, or we'll fail spectacularly, and yeah, that'll be that. So for this video, I don't actually have an example that I'm going to work from. I've seen interactions like this before, but I don't have a reference this time to work from. So I'm just going to describe what we're going to try to build. So I have a Ionic stencil application running now. And this is actually a one of the example applications from my creating Ionic applications with Stencil.js book, which isn't necessary at all for you to work from. I just wanted something a bit prettier to look at rather than just a sort of blank Ionic application. Even though this is a Stencil.js application with Ionic, what we're going to build should work pretty generically if you're using Angular or anything else. Because I'm mainly just going to be using some simple CSS transforms, animations, and just general Ionic APIs. So the general concept of what I want to try to achieve, and we're just going to have a bit of play around with this, is I have this cart button on the screen now, which launches your cart from anywhere in the application. And so basically, I'm sure you all know how a cart works, but I can go into any of these categories, find a product, say, I want to add this product to my cart. That's going to add that, and then I can just launch the cart from anywhere by clicking on it, and you can see everything I've added to my cart shows up in there. And this is just a generic modal, as you can see, just popping up from the bottom, which is fine. This is good enough styling. It looks fine, works fine, which is good. But what I thought would be interesting is if we could make the transition for that modal a bit more interesting. And what I thought we could do is have this little button sort of animate to fill the whole screen and have that be the transition. So this button, when we click on it, would just get bigger and bigger, quickly expand to fill up the screen, and then the modal would fade in to give this kind of appearance of it animating onto the screen. So I can actually kind of quickly demonstrate what I mean just by playing around with some styles in here. So what I want to do basically is say target this fab button, and fab, for anybody who doesn't know, stands for a floating action button. So it's like a button that kind of stays static on the screen. So what we will try to do is use a transform, and you may remember in the last video I mentioned that things like transforms are good because they won't trigger layouts where the browser has to recalculate everything on the screen. And so you'll see a good example of that in a second. So if I say scale, so scale 3D, and we want to scale, say, we'll just start with 10, for example. So you can see there that makes that button way bigger on the screen. But with the transforms, it isn't actually impacting any other elements. It's just making this single element bigger. So it's not affecting anything else, so it's not going to cause the browser to need to recalculate the positions of things. It's just this one thing getting bigger. Now hopefully this isn't too awkward, because it is in the bottom right hand corner. Most of this button, as it expands, is going to be off screen. So that might make the transition awkward. We'll see eventually, I guess. If this was a button in the middle of the screen, it would be a lot easier, and maybe it would look nicer. Maybe if this is on a sort of intro tutorial slide page where it's like a get started or start now button that would expand to fill the page, that might be more of an appropriate use case for this, but I'm hoping that this will still look good. yeah, so basically we're just going to expand it enough to fill the whole screen. I'm not sure how much we'll have to do, maybe 30 times. Okay, so yeah, so that, or maybe just a little bit more. You could fine tune this a bit, and obviously you're going to want it to expand for all screen sizes, and so there's definitely going to be some optimization required for this. But the general idea of these videos is we want to get just kind of a proof of concept, basic prototype working. Okay, so now that button has expanded to fill the whole screen, and at the same time I'm also going to want to make the cart icon not visible anymore. Now I'm not 100% sure how I want to achieve that yet, but just for the sake of the demonstration, I'll just set this to display none. Oh, and we'll need to get rid of the 2 there as well. I'll probably just do that by setting the color. That should affect that, right? Why did that not target the 2? Ion Fab button. Let me just check in the code here. Bring up the, I think it's in the app homepage. It's been a little bit since I've actually looked at this code. Okay, we have app checkout button, and then we have a separate component for that. And we have all sorts of fancy reduces and redux stuff going on in here. So why isn't that styling that? Oh well, we'll figure it out later. I'm not sure why I can't change the color of that text right now. But this is the basic idea. So we've blown up that button to the full size of the screen, and then we'll just put a transition on that. Let's say 0.3 seconds. We'll just use an ease in out easing function there. And so the basic idea is that we're going to transition like this. And this is a good example of why we want to kind of hide the 2 as well, because it does this weird little anti-aliasing effect as it changes. But yeah, so when we click on the button, this button will blow up to the full size of the screen, and then the actual modal will fade in. What happens if I actually click this now? Yeah, so that still launches. I think this is the Android version, I think. The default one is fade in. Yeah, so that still kind of pops in a little bit, but that's closer to what I was thinking of. So let me just set up that scale again. We'll say transform, scale 3D. Was it 35, I think we were working with? Let's hide that icon as well. I'm just going to manually just delete this 2 as well, just to get rid of that for now. And let's try that again, add that transition. I think I said 0.3 seconds, ease in, out. And you can also play around with which easing function you prefer for the animation style. So that's working again. And what I want to see basically is if I click on this, yeah, it's still not, I don't think, the best animation example here. So what we're going to do is we're going to, well, try at least to modify this, the animation that the modal uses when it pops in on screen. So we're going to create our own custom animation, which I've done before. I have a tutorial on that. So I'm just going to use the code from that, and I'll link to it so you can look at that in more detail. But the basic idea is that we'll have the modal like fade in from 0 opacity to 1 opacity. No like movement or anything like that. It's just going to fade in. And so the general idea is that it should, I hope, kind of create this effect that it's, this is all just one transition. So this button expanding and then the page fading in is going to look like it's all part of the same sort of transition animation. So in a way it's kind of like cheating a little bit, but it's going to look like the one transition. So we're going to get started on building that in just a second. I do want to quickly show you an example of this in a slightly different context. I have another example in my blog of a shared element transition. I'll just take a look at this one. I think I have a GIF of it working here. Yeah, so the GIF isn't as good quality, and now you're watching a video with a GIF, so I don't know how good this is going to look through this format, but you can kind of see here, I click this element and it looks like it's being like, you're following us to the next page, and the page is morphing to provide the detail of this image. This is actually just kind of a bit of smoke and mirrors and trickery. All that is happening here is when that product is clicked, or the image is clicked, it's just transitioning to the next page, but it's doing it in a similar sort of way where the page is fading in. And then on the second page, that image just starts in the same position as it was on the previous page and then just moves up. So I don't know how good my description of that was, so maybe it would be better to read this tutorial if you're interested. But the point I'm trying to get across is that with a bit of kind of tricks and a bit of just positioning and animation and stuff like that, we can create an effect that looks like some really complex page transition that would be really hard to implement. But we're mostly just using what is supported already. Okay, so I think that's enough rambling on. I think I've given enough context as to what we want to build, so let's see if we can do it. And I'm hoping the hardest challenge here won't be figuring out why that 2 couldn't be colored. I guess we'll see. So I'm going to jump into the code. Let me refresh this. Go back to iPhone as well, because I don't know, I think the iPhone styling looks nicer. And now we are going to actually do some code. So what we want to do basically is when the app checkout button is clicked, we want to make it much bigger. So we're going to have to modify the styles on the fly. If I were using Angular, I would use, as I did in the last UI challenge, I used the renderer to modify the styles. So if you're using Angular, or you should use that, or if you're using React or whatever, you should use whatever is best for modifying styles in the framework that you're using. I'm just going to try to keep it really generic and just use some just sort of standard properties in this tutorial. So yeah, just keep that in mind. There might be a better way to do it than what I'm going to be using. Okay, so let me just refresh myself on this code here. So we have our fab button, and then I've got on click this .launch modal, and this launches the modal. So what we're going to want to do then is make the button bigger when this is clicked, or when this method runs. So first we'll need to get a reference to the button itself. And this is a kind of stencil specific thing we're going to do here. So you would just grab a reference to the button in whatever way your framework allows best. You can just use straight up query selector if that's what you want to do, or in Angular you might use viewchild, but we're going to use the element decorator that stencil provides. So this is just going to allow us to grab a reference to the host element. So I'll just call that L. And since it's been just a little bit of time since I've used this, I'm just going to check to make sure that it is grabbing something. Okay, so if I click this now, yeah, so we got the app checkout button, and I think I can apply the scale to the checkout button itself. It'd be more accurate for me to say we're not grabbing a reference to the fab button, we're grabbing a reference to this component which contains the fab button. So let me actually just double check that that's fine. So we're going to target app checkout button. If we scale that, we can't actually do that, it looks like. Fair enough. Okay, so we are going to have to grab a reference directly to the Ion Fab button itself. And let me just also check if it works on Ion Fab. Yeah, this looks like it's going to work. So we'll grab a reference to the ion fab then. To make this a little bit more performant, we can still use this element we've set up. So we can run the query selector on that. And again, this is kind of a stencil specific thing, or rather a just vanilla JavaScript thing. But we're going to grab a reference to ion fab. And again, we're just going to check that that is returning as we'd expect. So we'll click on that, and now we have a reference to ion fab. So that is good. And now we just need to modify the style. So what I'm going to do is actually set up a reference to that. So I'll just call this fab, and we'll set that to equal our fab button. And let's just try adding the transform to it. So what we're going to say is fab.styles so it's fab.style.transform equals, and what was that, scale 3D 35, 1. So let's see if that works. So if this does work, it should just kind of pop in now because we haven't got it animated, but let's check that. Cool. So we have that huge button popping up, which is good. And to make that actually animate, we'll just add some styles to the fab button. So just in here, I'm going to target ion fab and just say transition 0.3 seconds, ease in, out. We'll give that a refresh and try again. Cool. So you can see that happening now. It expands to fill the screen, and then the modal pops up. It still doesn't look good because the modal just kind of pops up on top of it, which isn't what we want. It did actually kind of give me an idea. I was thinking like what it would look like if we had, rather than having the modal do the fade in animation, what if we kept it just popping in as it is now, but it had a transparent background, and then it would kind of look like it's shoving up on the screen with the button maybe. I might actually give that a try. See if we can get that to work. Because I think because this is a modal, we should be able to set a transparent background and see what is behind it. So if I just say ion background color transparent, no, background rather. I'm not sure why that isn't taking effect. Let me just try to manually do it here. So that should be transparent now, but we can't see behind it. Does the app cart also have a background? It does. Let me try to set the background on that to transparent. And we do have this backdrop as well. What if I set it on here actually? Background transparent. This is turning out to be a little bit harder than I was hoping. Let's try and find where that background's actually coming from. Yeah, because we do actually have the backdrop behind that as well. Okay, there we go. If we put it on the ion modal, and then we don't want that that backdrop, because it adds that kind of slightly black color to it. So let me just we'll change ion backdrop color as well to transparent. So that could work. Let me just see what that looks like. Obviously this is going to look terrible now because it's there's stuff everywhere and we got the wrong styling, but I just want to quickly see if this is something that might look cool. So we're going to apply that to ion modal. Give that a refresh and launch this again. Actually, that will have to go. Put that in the global. Which will be a problem if we have multiple modals, by the way. So it's going to affect all modals, but I'm just trying to do things kind of quickly in this tutorial. And why aren't you taking effect there? Okay, so the background is getting overwritten. Let's just give that an important tag and try again. We are still having that background show up. I might also need to set it at a lower point as well. Let's see what the background is. It should go all the way through. Ion content. Okay, so we're still getting the ion background color set there. Can I just... should be able to just change ion background color here too, I think, to transparent. Yeah, there we go. So let's give that a refresh. Yeah, so you can kind of see, hopefully, what I mean. Again, it still looks hideous right now, but having that pop in from the bottom, I don't know if I like it. I don't think I like it. We're not going to do that, I don't think. It might look good when it's all finished and, you know, I have all the styling done correctly here, but I think I'd prefer it to fade in. So we'll just delete that whole little detour there. I might just comment that out in case we change our mind later. But I think we're going to stick to the fading in for now. So what I'm going to do at this point is try that fade in animation. So what we're going to do basically is, if we just bring up the Ion modal controller, or the Ion modal rather, and if we take a look at the properties here, you can see we have a enter animation. So when we create the modal, as we are doing in this launch modal method here, so when I create that, say wait modal controller.create, I can also supply an animation here for it to use. And so rather than using the default animation, it's going to use our custom animation. So what we're basically going to do is create a custom animation to fade it in rather than having it pop in from the bottom or whatever, whatever it's currently doing. And so as I mentioned, I do have a tutorial for that. I have to remember what I called it. Create a custom modal page transition animation, cool. And so again, this is going to be generic no matter what you're using. This isn't specific for Stencil. This is just the generic Ionic modal API. And so you can see some examples here of some animations I've created for this tutorial. So we have a slide in, out, and a pop in, out animation. So actually the pop in, out animation might look cool, and then we'll also fade the opacity in as well. So what I'm going to do is, hopefully this API is still the same. It's been a while since I've done these transition animations. So what I'm going to do basically is steal that pop in, out animation. So as I've suggested here, we're going to create just a separate folder to hold animations. It's, you can kind of do it however you want, but just trying to keep things organized. So we'll create an animations folder, and inside of that, we're going to create this enter.ts animation. And we probably should, I don't know if we're going to do the reverse in this video, as in we're going to pop the card on screen. I don't know if we're going to get to doing the reverse and then popping it back and animating everything back. Depends on how long this goes for. If I don't get to that, I'm going to try to do a follow-up blog post where I finalize it all. So we should get to it at some point. I just don't know if we're going to do that in this video, but regardless, we're going to do both the enter and the leave animations. So let's copy that and cross our fingers and hope that the API is still the same. It's a good sign it's not complaining about anything. And we'll take that leave animation as well. Not actually making use of that wrapper there. And we are already animating the opacity, it looks like, as well, which is good. And again, I'm not going to spend too long talking about this, but this is basically just the styles we're animating to and from, or from and to. And so you can see here with this wrapper animation, we have this from to method, and we're saying we want to animate the opacity from 0 to 1. So as it pops on the screen, it's going to fade in. And on top of that, we're also transforming from 0.1 scale to the full scale of 1. And so that's going to start it really small and then expand it out. So we might try with and without this line. And then to use this animation, all we need to do is supply it as we are here. So we have to supply the enter animation and leave animation, and we have to link to those. So I'm going to pop that in as well into our checkout button. So I'll import those at the top. What is the path? We're going up twice now. Cool, and then we will supply them to our modal. Okay, let's see where we are at now. It's complaining because I never use that wrapper element, so let's just comment that out in case we did want to use it for whatever reason. Give that a refresh. Okay, now hopefully when we click this now, yeah, so it did that pop in, as you could see. That is probably a bit much because we have this button expanding and filling the screen, and then we also have the modal popping into our faces. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of this transform, and again I'll just comment it out for now in case we change our minds, but by commenting out this line we should now just have it just fading in, and that's it. So let's try that again. Oh, I've broken something with the animation there. Let me take a look at that. Why would that break? Just have to re-familiarize myself with this animation code here. Let me just check. If I just set this scale to 1 by default, let's check to see if that works. Yeah, okay. So we do need to make sure that's set to the sort of default full screen normal position. Let me also just quickly do that in the leave. Again, I don't know that we're actually using this, but I'm going to get it ready just in case we do get to that. Okay, so let's have a look at what we got here. We still have the car icon present, which is annoying. What I might do just for now is get rid of those completely, and then we can work at putting them back in afterwards. So let's comment those out, which I suck at commenting things inside of JSX, but I think this should do the job. Okay, so that's gone. So now we just have the blank button, and we'll put those values back in later. So let's see where we're at now. So that's actually pretty cool. I was actually going to make the background red on the modal too. I thought that might be a smoother transition, but it does actually also look kind of cool, like transitioning to white. I might actually try doing it a little bit slower. So we can also modify this animation here. You can see it's set to 400 duration. So we can make this as slow as we like. Let's do something really obnoxious, like 2 seconds, which I highly doubt we're going to use, but just to really exaggerate the effect and that might give us an idea. I said we probably won't use it. We still probably won't, but that actually doesn't look that bad. It looks kind of cool. I do think it's a bit slow. Why don't we try 1 second? All right, so we'll click that. Yeah, that looks pretty nice, I think. I like that a lot. I almost want to just leave it like this, and we might still, but I do want to see what it looks like with having this be the same color as the button. I am conscious of the time though. I don't actually know how long I've been filming for, but let's try to just quickly do this. Basically, we're going to set the content color of the checkout. So our app cart, we want to set the background to what is it, Ion color primary, I think. Oops. Let me just check that that's doing what I want it to do. Yeah, and we'll also have to change the Ion item background color for these as well. So obviously I have some elements on the screen now that I'll need to change to suit this new layout. I actually don't mind the checkout button. It does need to be changed because it's not obvious that it's a button, but it does look kind of cool with having the red everywhere. But let's just quickly also say Ion item background. So that should change the background of the items as well. And I don't mind the header. The header can stay as it is. And yeah, again, obviously I'm going to have to update the styling on these, but let's just see what it looks like. Yeah, I think you could do it either way, really. This version is, the transition does seem more smooth. I kind of prefer the cart having the white background, and I think that transition looked cool. But this does, the transition does look a bit smoother, I think. I feel like it does give more the sense that it's literally this button that it is expanding and the button that's containing the content kind of thing. Whereas with the white background, it does look like more of a transition to a new page, perhaps. Yeah, I think it works either way. But what I might do is tidy this up a bit, and I think we will keep this animation. And I think I also want to try it a bit slower with that transition as well. Actually, what I might change is, we can fiddle with this stuff in a second, but I want to try having a slightly slower transform transition, so like maybe like 0.6 seconds, just so that button's going to expand a bit slower. Maybe that's slightly too slow. Maybe like, tough call. 0.5 seconds maybe. This is why my videos that I make like this are so long, so I spend just forever like changing between 100 milliseconds or 200 milliseconds. Okay, let's go with that for now. And then maybe if I really want to, after I finish everything else, we can tweak the animation timing a bit. But I need to fix this styling here. It's not really relevant to the tutorial, but if we're making a nice animation, then I want the end result to look at least somewhat nice if it can. So let's modify that. For the purpose of this, let's actually bring up app cart. Let's see what we're working with here. Yeah, I'll just get rid of the price. I don't need to style what's not there, right? Actually, no, I'm gonna do it. And it's gonna be a bit cheaty though, and just add the style directly here. And just to clear up any confusion, if there is any, I'm not adding this animation to the book, to this example in the book. I'm just using this just as an example for this video. And these could probably be white, maybe. And I think I might also want to change that header just so it's not translucent. I might also have that be red. Oh, that's not my primary color. I probably have some styling going on or something. Why are you white? Let me just search for background. Ion toolbar background. I must have overwritten that or something. Doesn't matter. I am just going to quickly modify this. So I'm just going to dump it in here. My main concern right now is just getting this looking kind of cool. Cool. So yeah, there's more I would do to this page. I'm not 100% happy with this styling, but we're going to go with it, and we actually need to change the button too, so we can see that exit button. So we will change the icon to the light coloring, so we can see that cross. Cool. Yeah, so again, not happy with the general styling of this page, but it worked for our animation. Just seeing if that works. So let's click this now. And that's pretty cool. I feel like there's a bit of a... like maybe I want to have a slight delay on the animation. Like a slight delay before the modal fades in. Can't actually remember if there's a delay on here. There might be. Let me just do, again, a really obnoxious value just to check that delay exists. Delay is not a function. That's okay. I think there is a delay sort of method for this animation here. Again, in the interest of time and getting this done, what I might do is just I'll just use a set timeout just to delay the actual presentation with the code here. So we'll say like maybe like 300 milliseconds before we launch the modal. So the button will start animating right away and expanding. I need to make that async too. So the button will start expanding and animating right away, but then there's going to be a short delay before the modal fade-in starts. So I just want to see what that looks like, to see if it looks better. Yes, I think that will look better. I think we need a shorter delay though. $50 milliseconds more. And I think actually I'm going to make the button expand a bit faster again. So let's bring that CSS back and let's try 0.4. See how that goes. Yeah, and then we will make that a bit shorter again. Okay, I think, actually no, I like it when it fades in after it's fully expanded, I think. I think this is what we're gonna go with. I think that's pretty cool. I feel like there's a lot more tweaking that could happen here, but I think this is a pretty cool effect and it's pretty close to what I wanted. There's always more we can do to make it a little bit better, but this series is about just coming up with these prototypes and proofs of concept. We're learning on the fly here, so I'm not going to perfect this. I want to, but I'm not going to do it. We're going to stick with this result. So what I might do now is see if we can quickly just get this reverse animation happening. So all we really need to do is listen for when the modal closes and then just shrink the fab button back down to its normal size. And so to do that, we can use the onDid dismiss. So basically we can just attach that to our modal, and when it's dismissed, we can run some function. So we can set that up here. So we have our reference to the modal. So modal.onDid dismiss. And this is the function we want to run in here. Basically, we're just going to use this same code here. And we're just going to set the scale back to 1. I'm missing... oh, that's right. You can send the props back or the data back. We don't actually want to use that. I think this works. I'm thinking of the old way to use it. I think what we want to do now actually is we'll go down here, and I think we just wait. Let me just get rid of this. Await modal.onDid dismiss. And then we'll do the styling. I think that's how that should be done now. We'll check, we'll see if it works. So we're waiting for the modal to dismiss, and then we are setting that scale back to 1, which should shrink it back down. Let's see if that works. So we launch the modal, close the modal, and that works. I just also realized that it modifies all the styles in the because of the way I set up the where did I put those? Too many files open now. Here I think app cart, yeah, because I'm targeting the just generic Ion content, Ion toolbar. I think that's targeting everything. I should be able to just prefix that with Ion modal, I think should solve that problem. Yeah. So they go back to their normal colors, and hopefully this is still, yeah, cool. Anyway, back to the animation. So it kind of fades away, and then the button shrinks back down, which I think I'm happy with. I think that's pretty cool. So there is a little bit more that we still technically have to do here. I got to put the icon and the numbers back, and then basically you just want to hide them. When it's expanding, you want to make those not visible anymore, so they aren't filling up the screen with giant numbers and icons. And then when you shrink it back down, you'd want them again to become visible so you can see what's in the cart again. I'm not going to do that in the rest of this video. It might even be good as a little challenge to try to implement yourself if, depending on what sort of level you're at, maybe that would be a good sort of homework task, I guess, and saves me from making this video longer. But I think the result that we've got for this example here is I think it's really good. And there can always be improvements, of course. We could tweak this animation a bit, make it a bit better. Obviously, we're going to have to test it on different sized devices and styling on Android, for example. But the general concept here, I think, works pretty well. We have a pretty nice transition, having that button expanding. It looks like this one smooth animation of the button expanding and then the content transitioning on screen, but it's actually two separate things, with the button expanding and then the modal fading on the screen. But that sort of little trick, it gives us a pretty cool looking animation, and this is all quite performant as well, because all we're doing is animating using a CSS transition to animate a transform property. And as I mentioned before, the transform property isn't going to cause browser layouts, so we don't need to do any recalculation. And so this animation should perform very well. Okay, so I hope you liked the result in this video, and I hope you learned a thing or two as we built it. I think this is another successful one. One of these days I'm gonna try something and it's gonna fail spectacularly, but I think this worked really well. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.